The dispute began when the United States administration demanded priority access and pricing guarantees on Canadian agricultural exports, specifically frozen potato products. Canada responded not with tariffs, not with dramatic press conferences, but with paperwork. Ottawa implemented rigorous phytosanitary inspections at southern border crossings. Technically compliant, legally defensible, administratively devastating. On paper, it's regulatory enforcement. In practice, it slows shipments just enough to break the just-in-time logistics model that powers the American quick-service restaurant industry. No potatoes, no fries, no margins. And when margins disappear, prices rise. French fries are not a side dish in the quick-service model. They are the profit engine. High margin, low cost, volume driver. Between 2019 and 2024, fry prices already climbed roughly 134% due to input pressures and labor costs. Now introduce border friction. The result is immediate wholesale spikes. Franchise operators have two options: absorb losses or raise prices. They will raise prices. And when they do, it's not hedge funds that feel it. It's lower-income households who rely on quick-service meals as affordable calorie anchors. The estimated tariff regime tied to this dispute could cost the average American household around $1,200 annually. A potato dispute becomes a cost-of-living issue. Here's where it becomes more serious. Supply uncertainty forces restaurants to reduce operating hours. Reduced hours mean reduced shifts. Reduced shifts mean reduced wages. The service worker doesn't care about phytosanitary compliance clauses. They care about next week's paycheck. What looks like a diplomatic disagreement translates into local financial instability in small towns across America. That's not humorous. That's fragile. Here's the uncomfortable truth. 4 Canadian processors control roughly 97% of frozen potato exports entering the United States. For decades, North American integration created the illusion that Canadian supply was domestic. It was treated as guaranteed. But proximity is not ownership. Yes, the US grows around 44 billion pounds of potatoes annually, but freezing and processing capacity is geographically concentrated and insufficient to replace Canadian volume quickly. Building replacement capacity would require billions in capital, years of construction, regulatory approval, labor integration. You cannot fix this by next quarter. The real danger is not fry prices, it's confidence destruction. The United States and Canada share one of the most integrated trade relationships in the world: energy, agriculture, minerals, manufacturing. When one side begins using regulatory friction as leverage, it introduces doubt. And doubt changes how corporations allocate capital. Long-term contracts shorten, hedging costs rise, insurance premiums increase, trust becomes priced. That is deeply worrying between friendly neighbors. Now remove the humor entirely. Canada supplies the United States with crude oil for Midwestern refineries, uranium, aluminum, electricity, lumber. If administrative slowdowns expand beyond agriculture into energy or minerals, the economic shock would escalate from inflationary to recessionary. A potato delay raises menu prices. An oil delay raises gasoline prices. The leverage asymmetry becomes enormous. That is why this standoff matters. China is not involved in potato shipments, but Beijing is watching the confidence fracture. If the United States cannot maintain seamless trade with its closest ally, its broader negotiation posture weakens. Canada has already begun diversifying exports toward ASEAN markets, Japan, Indonesia. Diversification reduces American purchasing dominance. Multipolar commodity routing benefits China strategically because it fragments U.S. leverage. This is not dramatic. It is structural. As Canadian agricultural exports reroute toward Asia, emerging markets gain access. India and Southeast Asian nations benefit from diversified supply. However, growth distribution remains unequal. Urban centers capture consumption gains. Lower-income populations remain vulnerable to inflation. But strategically, the U.S. loses exclusive continental advantage, and that changes global trade psychology. Over a 3 to 10-year horizon, this may mark the end of the proximity discount. For decades, U.S. corporations priced Canadian inputs as guaranteed. Now geopolitical risk premiums enter the model. Cost of capital rises. Hedging complexity rises. Consumer prices structurally adjust upward. The United States shifts from dominant continental buyer to competing international customer. That is not temporary. That is a psychological shift in trade relations. The U.S.-Canada potato trade war sounds trivial. It is not. It represents the weaponization of compliance, the erosion of bilateral trust, the exposure of industrial dependency, the repricing of geographic proximity. When two friendly neighbors begin testing each other's leverage, the real casualty is confidence. And confidence is the foundation of trade. Once shaken, it takes years to rebuild. At ETN, we look beyond headlines and isolate structural signals. This is not about French fries. It is about how fragile economic trust can be, even between allies. If you value institutional-grade macroeconomic analysis without sensationalism, subscribe to ETN. We track the shifts before they become crises. Stay informed, stay analytical.